Welcome back to Space Thoughts. Today's I'm going to actually cover two topics, and they both relate to spaceports or proposed spaceports. I know I haven't dealt on a lot of domestic things lately. I've been doing a lot of international stuff with the Russian ASAT demonstration, the Chinese complaint in the UN, and such. So we're gonna come a little bit closer to the U.S. and some domestic laws with regards to spaceports. What I want to talk about in particular is Camden Spaceport in Georgia and the proposed Maine Spaceport space complex in the state of Maine. Yes, so the state of Maine is considering a spaceport. These are two issues that I think are on the front burner right now and important to watch. So first thing I do is talk about Camden Spaceport, and we'll do this. Go to an article here in a local paper. This spaceport proposal has been in the works for several years now, but there's been a lot of roadblocks in the way, and mostly from environmental NGOs and other NGO legal groups that have come in and actually really tried to stop this. Basically, the biggest impediment was this idea of a review by the FAA under the National Environmental Protection Act, or NEPA. This was required by the FAA before they could grant a license. The FAA did it. The FAA held several public meetings on this environmental assessment they were working on, and they actually produced a draft, put it out there, and for public comment, put it out for public comment again, and finally approved it, and almost got to the point of actually licensing the spaceport last year, probably about the middle of last year. But the Department of the Interior stepped in particular, the Forest Service, saying, "Well, we're not so sure about this. The environmental effect, on the local area." So that stopped it too. So just a little bit of background on the lawsuits. There was the review that the FAA was doing. One of the things they were considering was potential hazards that these rockets that are being proposed to be launched from here would cause. And there was an issue. There was an issue from two groups. And actually, I say two groups, but one group was involved in multiple ways. First, the Southern Environmental Law Center filed a lawsuit in federal court against the FAA and some other NGOs, and I believe the county of Camden, Georgia itself, basically saying, you know what, you weren't transparent about this idea of potential hazards and things. You haven't produced relevant emails, so we're suing you for this. At the same time, another NGO in the state of Georgia called the 100 Miles Group, which is basically dedicated to environmental protection of beaches, went to the Superior Court in the county of Camden and filed a lawsuit. Now, the group representing 100 Miles was actually the Southern Environmental Law Protection Group, the same one that was filing suit in federal court. So they've had their fingers in both these pies. Long story short, eventually the case in federal court settled out, and that one went away. But the one in Camden County still remains. And under Camden County, there is allegations that the Camden County basically broke their transparency law. I think it's basically their version of a Freedom of Information Act. They basically violated that by not providing certain information, and they've amended their complaint as well, and that's actually still ongoing. However, that one wasn't really an impediment to the FAA sitting down and actually licensing, saying, okay, we continue on with the licensing process. Once the federal case was done, then the FAA could really move along into that. However, the FAA produced its final environmental impact statement, and they were just getting ready to license that, I believe, back in June. And all of a sudden, basically there was another delay, and the licensing got delayed again until September. They were getting ready to license it again in September, and then the Department of the Interior, the Forest Service, steps in and said, "Look, we're not convinced. We still have concerns. Please talk to us about it." So finally, in December, at the end of last year, I believe they basically gave Camden Spaceport a license. Well, right after that happened, another group started gathering a petition to basically saying, we got to hold a referendum on this. Now, the proposed area of Camden Spaceport is private property. It's not public property. So there would have to be a sale of the property to Camden County in order for them to build a spaceport. And what this group is, they gathered enough signatures on a petition and said, we're going to force a referendum on this. They brought it to Superior Court. They brought the court at one level, and the court said, no, you waited too long to get this petition out because everything's ready to go. The group appealed, and the judge at the next level at the appeals court basically said, no, I'm halting any sale on the property. You're going to hold a referendum on March 8th. So on March 8th of this year, they're going to hold a referendum to see if they can approve the sale of the property in order to build this spaceport. So I've been watching this for a long time, and I've been if you subscribe to my briefing letter, you see me following this a lot and discussing it. But bottom line is what's happening here is this whole storyline of all the legal challenges, the voting challenge, and the other impediments is really creating what I think is a playbook for future challenges to other states that want to create spaceports. In fact, if I was involved with an environmental group or environmental law firm, I would be watching this. I would watch this very carefully and basically writing up a book on how to stall or defeat a spaceport. So I think this is very important to watch with this. Now, Camden County has some issues. There was a company called Vector that initially was going to be the launch company. No, that's basically what they call them, launch companies. And they had they had a small sat rocket they were going to do. In fact, they put on a big show several years ago where they actually launched one of their rockets, which obviously didn't even reach suborbital altitude. And really, it was not so much really needed a license because it really fell, because of what they were doing, it fell into what we call an amateur class rocket. But they launched it, put out a big spectacle, and they were going to be the launch customer. They went bankrupt about a year later, and actually Rocket Lab bought up all their assets, including their intellectual property. So the big question is, what kind of rockets or launchers are you going to use at the spaceport? And there's concern about overflights. What if the rocket goes, explodes or malfunctions? Where's the debris going to settle and such? So this has been a very big contentious issue that's been going back and forth on this. So the biggest impediment or the biggest weakness that Camden Spaceport has, it doesn't have a launch customer right now. In other words, it doesn't have customers say, okay, once you build a spaceport, we're going to be there. Kind of a field of dreams for you. We're in kind of field of dreams territory. You build it and they will come, but they don't know who they're going to get as far as a launch customer goes. So in my opinion, this whole idea of Camden Spaceport in itself is basically the playbook for challenges to future spaceports. Now, with that in mind, we'll go to the state of Maine. The state of Maine has been working on a proposal not only to develop a spaceport in Maine, but also an entire industry in Maine for outer space, based mostly on small satellites. They want to cover everything from industry to education. They want a whole economy approach to this. I attended a workshop a few years ago, one of the first workshops on this, and where we discussed it. And the whole idea is they want all of Maine to benefit. They don't just want certain sections of Maine to benefit from. So back in 2020, I believe it was, a Maine state senator introduced a bill that was basically similar to this one, a Maine Space Corporation Act, to get this ball rolling. So the whole idea is, in order to, we're not just talking about a spaceport, we're talking about a whole state approach. So we're going to need a legal entity in order to create this idea of a spaceport to facilitate it. However, because of things that were going on at that time, the bill died. And now in 2021, this was just actually reintroduced on January 20th, 2022. So been reintroduced into the Maine State Senate, and we're going to move from there. So I'm not going to go through this in detail. I'll provide a link to it if you want to look at it. But basically, what it is setting up this Maine Space Corporation, which will be the body that will facilitate a space industry in Maine, including the funding and the actual licensing and construction for what have you, and attracting customers for this idea of a space industry in Maine, or a spaceport. Let me give you a simple example. I live about 15, 20 miles from a former Strategic Air Command base. The 509th Bombardment Wing was there. Back in the 80s, when the Air Force said, you know what, the active Air Force said, we're going to be moving this facility, there was this group called the Pease Developmental Authority. And basically what they did is they came together, this group, of civilians what to do with this property that the Air Force was going to give them. And their responsibility was to facilitate, not only the destruction of older facilities, but the construction of new facilities and to attract industry, including airlines, because there's an extremely long runway. I think it's close to 2 miles, anyways, 1 to 2 miles. Now, what happened is the Air National Guard actually occupies one side of the facility. They kept that and they maintain the runway, but still, there's at least one airline coming in. A bunch of industries have come in and basically built up the structures and occupied them. So they have a lot of tenants there, and they've actually developed the former Air Force property. That's what the Maine Space Corporation is basically going to do. It's going to facilitate a space industry in Maine, get that spaceport built, and attract customers. Now, Maine doesn't have the weakness that Camden does. It does have two companies in Maine right now who are working on on rockets to launch small satellites. So they will be, in a sense, launch customers for the Maine space complex, as the spaceport is going to be called. However, the problem is, Maine is a very how can you say it takes a lot of pride in its environment. Most of Maine is very rural, a lot of forestry, a lot of forests and such, and environment. And of course, environmental concerns are a big deal. Now, when it gets to the point, once this is passed, once the corporation gets in and they start working on a spaceport, one of the first things they're going to have to do is they're going to have to get the spaceport licensed. And in order to get it licensed, the FAA is going to have to do an environmental assessment under the National Environmental Protection Act, NEPA. And this is where I see NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and other groups coming in and using what went on with Camden in the licensing process to basically use as a playbook to go against Maine. Now, to what degree, I don't know. It won't be a play-by-play book, but they'll definitely use it as basically a guide on how to basically disrupt it, because there's going to be opposition to this, and that's just a given, and you just got to accept it. So there's going to be a lot of things to deal with. The idea is on the success of whether a space complex is actually licensed is going to depend a large part in how well the Maine Space Corporation facilitates these groups and such. So chances are there's going to be lawsuits. There's going to be challenges to the environmental assessment. You might even, depending on the politics at the time, the Maine environmental agencies might get involved too and give some pushback. And even the Department of the Interior might come in and give some pushback, depending on what the national politics are at the time. So again, Maine is starting its process, and it's got to get this entity, the Maine Space Corporation, into being, and that means Maine State Legislature has got to act, and it's got to create it through law, but also they got to fund it, and from there it's a matter of getting the people to populate the board and get things moving on a Maine space complex. And like I said, Maine isn't just looking for a spaceport; they're looking for a whole industry approach to this, so all of Maine benefits to some degree, and a lot of this is going to be about what we call STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math with it. So again, now the idea is, I don't think they're planning on launching SpaceX-sized rockets or anything, but they are looking at the small satellites as an industry, and small satellites are a big business right now, and definitely a trend that's moving forward and such. So again, these are two different spaceport efforts that are very important that I'm keeping my eye on. Camden isn't out of the woods yet, because of that referendum on March 8th, and I think the Maine has a long way to go before they get a spaceport licensed once they start the process. I'm thinking at least it's going to be at least a couple years, and maybe more, depending on what kind of pushback they get from NGOs, any lawsuits they have to deal with, whatever and such. But that's all I have for you today. And until then, stay safe and stay healthy, and I'll talk to you next time.